My dear friends, take some tzedakah, and when you put it tzedakah, have in mind, same thing by the same Tehillim, Henya bas brachet v'yeralea, the shlucha that is need of a miraculous awakening. Please God, do so now for her to come back to a family of 12 Kinderlach, soll sein gesund und stark, and she should continue her shlichus all the way to the Geula. Good Yom Tov. Now you're asking again for a weiter Yom Tov. You forever hear Yom Tov. So today indeed is a Yom Tov. It's Chag HaGeula. Chag HaGeula of the Mittel Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's son, of Duber, the second one of the Chabad Rebbe, who unfortunately, due to slander, etc., had to spend a month and 10 days in prison. And what's the story? Reb Pinchas Reitzes was a chassid of the Mittel Rebbe. When Reb Pinchas passed away, he only had a nephew as an heir. And he was one who was not fond of chassidim. He was not a chassid. Not only was he not a chassid, in fact he was against chassidim. And he found a letter that the Mittel Rebbe had sent to his uncle, where he asks him to be part of a special committee to distribute money for charity. And there was a sum of 4,000 rubles. So this nephew showed this letter to a cousin of the Mittel Rebbe, who was unfortunately an evil individual. And he decided to use this letter, and he decided to put some, actually, extortion on the Mittel Rebbe. And he went to Mittel Rebbe and asked him an exorbitant amount of money, and he said, if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to report you to the government. Mittel Rebbe told him, look, you have nothing to report, I didn't do anything wrong, I have nothing to be afraid of. I have nothing to be concerned about. So what did he do? He took that letter, and from the 4,000, he made it into 104,000. A huge sum of money. And with this he went to the government and said, look, here's an individual who is collecting huge fortunes of money for obviously only one reason, to promote himself against the Russian government. Further he said that in the shul of the Mittel Rebbe is built exactly replica of the Beis HaMikdash. Now this is such a ludicrous statement. I don't know if the city was big enough to build the Beis HaMikdash size. But in any case, it doesn't take much for someone who loves Jews to accept any kind of slander. And then, Lepoel, what happened? On a Saturday night, on the 28th day of Tishri, the year 1826, suddenly investigators came to the Rebbe's house and searching for incriminating evidence. A large crowd gathered. Everybody was extremely concerned. We were able to hear the family pleading and crying and begging the police not to do anything. The only one who was unfazed was the Mittel Rebbe himself. He went into his room and he wrote a Chassidic treatise. He even said he's willing to take Chassidim to come for Yechidus. He was completely oblivious to the whole issue. But unfortunately, he was taken away. Whole story is that during the way they were very respectful to him. They allowed him to say chassidus in different places. But he ended up in a prison in Vitebsk. And he was actually jailed for a month and 10 days. But they realized right away that this is not your common criminal. And they gave him certain privileges. He was allowed to have 3 chassidim with him the whole time. 3 times a day was allowed to have 20 people for a minyan to daven with him. He was allowed twice a week to say Chassidic discourses in front of 50 people. And the reason was because the doctors testified to the court that in case the Rebbe will not be able to share Chassidic teachings, his life is endangered. This is not a matter of just someone who wants to teach for whatever reason. His whole life is teaching Chassidus, and if he cannot impart Chassidus to his Chassidim, he will simply, chas v'sholem, not live. Eventually, on the 10th day of Kislev, saying in the Tehillim, in chapter 55, the words, Pada v'sholem nafshi, which is the song that you hear in the background. Pada v'sholem nafshi. He has saved my soul in peace, is when he was notified that he is released. Not only was he released, he was given special privileges after that. He was recognized as an important member of society, and so far and so forth. The interesting that during the deliberations, this Lipman, who was the scoundrel who made this accusation, at one point, as he was accusing the Rebbe of all his illegal activities, he suddenly said, Rebbe. And then the Mittel Rebbe turned to the judge, to the minister, and said, see, he's accusing me of being the worst criminal, but in the meantime he's calling me Rebbe. And indeed, they all recognize that he's the Rebbe, and they freed him. And this is the Chag HaGeula. May the Eibishter help. From this Geula, we should go to the complete and final Geula with Mashiach now.